Good morning, I'm WaywornWyrm, and welcome to my channel. And welcome to the first YouTube video where you can see my face. I've been doing this more and more on Twitch, although it's usually just a small thing up in the corner, like over here or down here, depending on what game I'm playing. But I knew this video would come at some point. At least on YouTube. It's probably just going to be these like off-brand stuff, because again, I don't think that you seeing me when I tell my normal stories helps the story at all. But that set aside, let's talk about what I want to talk about today. And what I want to talk about is Carlos Maza and Steven Crowder and YouTube's response. It's Thursday, June 6th, when I'm filming this. It's going to go up either tonight or tomorrow. Tonight, it might go up tonight because I want it to go up tonight. I want it to go up soon. But maybe tomorrow because this feels like a Friday video. And, yeah. So, why I'm making this now is it looks like we're into just the people's response. I think everything that's going to happen has happened. Maza did his accusations. Crowder's responded. YouTube did their investigation, and they came to the conclusion that they're going to come to. I don't think there's a chance for anyone to appeal. And even if there is, I don't think that YouTube would appeal it. Or, would change their mind on an appeal, if that was such a thing. So that's part of the reason why, is just, I think the main show is done. But also, not too long ago, I finished watching Leonard French's stream from yesterday, June 5th, about this, and I left a really long comment on his video, but I want to talk more about it, so let's do that. Let's assume you have no idea what I'm talking about, though, at first. Who is Carlos Maza? Who is Steven Crowder? Why should we care? So, Carlos Maza is a Vox reporter. He has a show, I think it's called Sure Strike, or something along those lines. It's like Sure or True and Strike, and two of those three words are in it. Let me look it up real quick to be sure. It is Strike Through. Strike Through. Okay, I was close. Strike Through. And Steven Crowder is a right-wing personality on YouTube. I'm not even sure what to call him. He has, I guess it's a podcast called Louder with Crowder, where he says his political opinion. We'll call it says. He also likes to debate people. And I put it in quotes because most of his debating is semi-ambushing people who have no who are just walking by, and he gets to prepare, but they don't, which I don't consider that to be a real debate. I don't consider that to be a fair debate. And he also engages in a lot of whataboutisms and facts that sound right but aren't. So, yeah. As you can tell, I'm not a fan of him. But I don't think my lack of being a fan of him really impacts anything that I'm about to say, because it's not inherently about him. And then, over the last 2 years, Steven Crowder, has made, as far as I can tell, a couple of dozen comments about Carlos Maza. I am relying on other people for this, because I am not going to go through Steven Crowder's videos and try and find out how many times he has said things about Carlos Maza. I don't hate myself that much. So, excuse me. So what has happened? Steven Crowder has said, as far as I can tell, there are 6 things that go beyond the pale. 6 things that are, irredeemably offensive that he has said about Carlos Maza. Almost everything is about his sexuality, since Carlos Maza is gay. Several things about being an anchor baby and or Mexican. Maza is of Latino descent. He was born in the U.S. Apparently his family he wasn't. I don't know if they come from Mexico or not. If they don't, and Steven Crowder still calls him a Mexican, that's offensive. That's a common but offensive. But I don't actually know. So I'm going to give Crowder the Steven of the doubt, the benefit of the doubt on this. And apparently Maza has referred to himself as an anchor baby before. So, there are at least 6 to 18, possibly more times that Steven has said things like that Maza has talked about himself. Has called himself these things. Now, a lot of these things that he said, which I'm hesitant to say for a bunch of reasons, relate to Maza's sexuality. And as I said, there are 6 times where he has said words that they are offensive, that is cut and dry. But there's apparently half a dozen to about a dozen and a half, maybe more, times where Crowder has used terms that are not inherently offensive. He has used a word that is a well-known reclaimed slur. He has used the word gay, which, like this well-known reclaimed slur, can definitely be used to put people down, and has a long history of that. Maza's about my age, so I imagine that Maza's situation was, as you can see, I'm a white man. Maza's Latino. So I'm hesitant to say that his situation was similar to mine, which is kind of where I was going, but that's not perhaps the best phrasing for it. What would probably be a better phrasing is the children that Maza went to school with are, broadly speaking, most likely similar to the children I went to school with. They are probably, broadly speaking, culturally similar. Although the US is a large country, and I'm not sure where in the US Maza was, going to school in the 90s and the early 2000s, especially when it comes to opinions on Latinos and people who are not straight. I'm sure that those were very similar throughout the entire nation. So I am sure, growing up, Carlos Maza was demeaningly called gay more times than he can count. And I'm sure that being demeaned with a word that does accurately describe him was worse than when I was called the same thing, because gay does not accurately describe me. That is not a term to describe my sexuality. So I know how much how demeaning and how offensive that word can be when that doesn't apply to you. I am sure it's worse when it does. But I don't know. I'm not gay. So I am missing context there. And I have no idea what it's like to be demeaned for being Latino, because obviously I am not Latino. Especially when I was younger, I was pale as can be. I'm not as pale, but there's been no point in my life where you could ever mistake me for not a fully white dude. Excuse me. So, a bunch of times, Maza's been called these things that are not, while they are not necessarily always offensive, they can be. They can be meant as offensive terms. Okay. So we've got that settled. After this happening for 2 years, and Maza getting to the point where he could wake up and check his Twitter and other social media and see that there is a uptick in harassment that he's getting, he could use that to accurately predict that Steven Crowder mentioned him in his latest video. And he got tired of it. It happened for 2 years. I think I would get tired of it too. So he brought it up to YouTube. And in fact, so sometimes this harassment was horrible. And on at least one occasion, Maza was doxxed. Which, by the way, I'm going to stop right now. If you dox people, fuck you. Doxing is not okay. No, never. Don't fucking do it. Just thinking about doxing is like, yeah, making me angry. Don't do it. It's no. Never. So Maza got tired of this for obvious reasons. And he went to YouTube about it, and he alleged that Steven Crowder was behind this. He led this. YouTube did a multi-day investigation where they found that the videos that had been reported to YouTube, they could not substantiate claims of targeted harassment from Crowder towards Maza. Okay. And if you take what Crowder has said and just take that, I can see where YouTube's coming from. However, that's not the case. Every time Crowder talked about Maza, harassment of Maza raised noticeably. And now you can argue that Crowder had nothing to do with it, blah, 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 blah. And this is kind of... So one of the reasons why I wanted to talk about this, and talk about it today, is Leonard French and his about hour-long live stream of this yesterday, June 5th, which I just saw a couple hours ago. And that was kind of his point, is that if you just take the words that Crowder has said, is that worth... Does that reach the bar of we should deplatform him? And just that taken in isolation, I don't think so. But here's the question. And Leonard French seems to land on the no side for this. I land on the yes side. Is Steven Crowder responsible for the harassment against Maza that Crowder's audience has done? Now, whoever you are watching, I am sure that when I asked that question, yes or no came up. In your mind, just bam. I am sure that you are invested enough in whatever side you're invested in that you've already answered this question for yourself. Okay. So let's set that aside for a minute. Let's talk about me. Let's pretend I have an audience bigger than the audience I have, because this argument doesn't really work if you assume, it doesn't work with the audience size I have here on YouTube. I have 65 subscribers, and I can get like a 10th or a 20th of that to read any video of mine or watch any video of mine. So let's pretend that I have a viewership that is 10,000 times what it is. So 650,000 people. That's a good number, I think. At least for this hypothetical. Let's say I take a video. I dedicate an entire video to talking about how much I dislike someone who is also on YouTube. I'm not going to attach any names to this for a whole bunch of reasons, including the fact that some of these hypotheticals get a little dark, and I don't. So let's say I make an entire video, talking about how much I dislike someone. Now, nothing I say in this video is bad. I don't use slurs. I don't do worse than do things like so-and-so's dumb. Or maybe I accuse them of being a bad faith actor. Or something like that. Okay. So I say these bad things, but not terrible things. And maybe these things are accurate, maybe they're not. About this person. And I put it up on my YouTube channel. And a substantial number of my audience watches it. And then a concerted effort of harassment happens against this person in the days that follow. Is that my fault? Am I to blame? In my opinion, yeah. Not really. Because I could argue that I didn't know that was going to happen. I could argue that it's coincidence. And you can't prove at a one-off that that's true. You know, that it was definitely my audience. And definitely because of what I say. Okay. I make another video. Same thing, but about someone else. And I put it up on my channel. And a substantial amount of my audience watches it. And in the days and weeks that follow, there's a concerted harassment attempt against this second person. Am I responsible? I fall down same side again. Now, there's definitely a little bit more responsibility because I should have made a video between those two where I assume that the harassment is possibly from my audience from the first video, and I denounce it. But let's say I don't. I make the second video. There's a harassment campaign. I make a third video about a third person. Same content. Again, I put it up on my channel. It's watched by a substantial number of my audience. And there's harassment against this person. How many times, how many videos do I have to make before I am clearly to blame? When does the fact that every time I put out a video that puts someone down and then they get harassed, how many videos before it should be clear to me that making this video directly causes harassment? How many times? I think by the third or fourth time, I should at least be assuming that A might be causing B. Because A is happening, and a short span later, B happens. You know, what if instead of saying that they're dumb, I make videos where I talk about them coming to bodily harm, and someone takes that and murders the person? How many of those videos can I make before I can be held responsible for murdering those people? Is that just once? Can I get away with it twice? 3 times? How many videos? Okay. So I think it is safe to say that there comes a point where if you make an entire video speaking negatively about someone, and then members of your audience go and harass that person, there comes a point where you should be held responsible if you're making entire videos. So, let's get away from entire videos. What if I have a video where I talk about a whole bunch of things, and one of those things is talking negative about a person? And then, I put it up, it gets watched by a good number of my audience, and harassment. How many times can that happen before I should be blamed? What if I just say a sentence? What if that sentence isn't relevant? What if I start a video and go, hey, before we can get into the subject of the video, person X, they're stupid. Or they're gay. Or how many times can I say that? How many videos can I make where I include a sentence out of nowhere that I don't like someone, that I think they're done, that I think they're gay, that I think they're this, that I think they're that? I don't go to slurs. I don't go to words that are inherently on their own specifically offensive in all cases. However, it is clear that I am using it in a negative light, in a negative manner, in a manner to put this person down, to speak negatively about them. How many times can I do that and put the video up and have it be watched by people, by a decent number of my audience, and then the person gets harassed? How many times can I do that before it becomes clear that me saying this negative thing directly leads to the person being harassed? Now, does it make a difference if I acknowledge this in a positive light? If I say in my video, if I say something to the effect of, yeah, I can say something negative about it and my audience will harass this person, does that make me more culpable? Does that make it my fault faster? What if every time this happens, I call my audience out for it and I say, don't do this. This is, this is wrong. This is bad. It's unacceptable. Does that change how culpable I am? Can I get away with it more times? Can I get away with it infinitely if I call my audience out after every time it happens? What if I don't mention it? Does that change things? How about if I How about if I call someone out? Okay, so, let's say I'm talking bad about Maza. Let's say I am, and he writes an article, and I want to talk about his article. Let's say his article is about, he's got a BA in political science, so I assume that currently he is making political videos. Let's say he makes a video, a report, whatever, about the future of electric cars in America. And I call him a gay reporter. Him being gay, does that matter? Do I add any context to this report by pointing out his sexuality? Should that matter? Now, if he were making an article about say gay rights in America, and I call him a gay reporter, does that matter? Because that clearly adds context. He's going to have a different experience as a gay man talking about gay rights in America than I would. I have a different experience because I am not a gay person. So, is it all right for me to bring it up then? So, if he is talking about, LGBT issues, should, is it okay for me to bring up the fact that he's gay? I would say probably. Now, if his article has nothing to do with LGBT stuff, should I call him gay? Should I call him a gay reporter? Does that matter? Is it a positive? Is it a negative? This has nothing to do with being gay in this hypothetical situation. Now, what if I talk about political matters, and I'm not going to talk about anything that Carlos Maza has done. I'm not going to talk about an episode of Strike Through. I'm not even going to talk about an issue that was covered on Strike Through. Strike Through has nothing to do with this. Carlos Maza has nothing to do with this video I'm making. And I start it, and I say, how about that gay guy over at Vox? I'm clearly talking about Maza. I bring him up, and I call him gay. Except he has nothing to do with anything I'm talking about. Is that okay? Those are the questions that I'm not seeing a lot of people ask about this issue. Because I don't think that Steven Crowder should be deplatformed if you only take the words that he said. Now, there are so many caveats to that. Crowder says he's doing this for playful ribbing. It's just friendly joking with someone who, as far as I can tell, he's not friends of. I don't even think they're acquaintances. They know of each other, but to my knowledge, they've never interacted. As far as I can tell, in Steven Crowder's mind, Carlos Maza is just a gay political commentator on YouTube. I honestly think that in Steven Crowder's mind, Carlos Maza just happens to be a person that fits the person that Crowder wants to talk about. He doesn't even really want to talk about him. He just wants to every now and again point out that Carlos Maza exists and he's gay. Make fun of his lisp. Call him a word that is a reclaimed slur. And due to YouTube's history of this particular 5-letter word, doesn't really matter if you say it positively or negatively. Actually, if you say it positively, there's a bigger chance of this. You can be demonetized. You can be deplatformed for this. So I'm not going to say the word. I'm also not going to say it because it is a reclaimed slur. And I don't want to say it and have somebody somewhere decide that I'm not using it in a positive light. And sure, that does limit me. Maybe there's another 5-letter word that relates to LGBT people. And yes, I know even by just saying LGBT, I'm leaving out letters. And confusion can be created by my choice of language. And assumptions can be made that might lead to offense, where I don't intend offense. And that has to be thought of. If you assume that Steven Crowder is acting in good faith, you assume that he lacks knowledge that he should have about the words that he's using. And that while people of that broad community sometimes use this word, it is a word that is historically a slur. And that has to be thought of. Now, assuming that Steven Crowder is acting in good faith and he is ignorant of the history of this word, which, let's check how old Steven Crowder is. He's from Grosse Pointe, Michigan. It's in Wayne County. He's from Detroit. No wonder I don't like him. He's from Detroit. Gross. And he was raised in Quebec. Okay. I can't tell how old he is. He worked on the show Arthur in 2000 to 2001. Wikipedia is not telling me. I thought this was going to be really easy. I might have to cut out this. Okay, here we go. Born July 7th, 1987. Okay. So, do I think that Steven Crowder is unaware of the slur that is queer? Hard to say, because he's from Quebec. Well, he's from Michigan, grew up in Quebec. But here's also the thing. Grosse Pointe, Michigan. I'm sure he still had family there. And I am sure that, I know that from Quebec, I don't know exactly where Greenfield Park is. Let's check. Greenfield Park is a former city in southwestern Quebec in Canada. It's currently a borough of very French name. Show me a better map. It's in southern Quebec. Okay. So it's near Vermont. So Grosse Pointe, Michigan is probably about a day's travel at most. And yes, I know Grosse Pointe is Grosssepointe, which means it's French, so it should not be pronounced Grosse Pointe. It is pronounced Grosse Pointe. Just like there's a town here in the Willamette Valley of Oregon, Jervis. It is pronounced Jervis. It should be Gervais. If my wife watches this, she's going to roll her eyes at that. I hate that Jervis is called Jervis. But that is neither here nor there. So, Steven Crowder has some deniability because he lived in Quebec, and I don't know enough about Quebec to know for sure that that word would have been known as a slur. I know Quebec well enough to know that there's a lot of French spoken. English is not spoken very much. So there's plausible deniability, but I'm sure he visited his family in Michigan a lot. So those are chances that he could have learned the history of that word. Starting when he was 13, he started working in America. That, combined with the fact that he's worked for Fox News, he's been frequently featured on the Glenn Beck program, and just he's had this podcast since 2009, so a decade. I don't think there's a way that you can honestly say that he doesn't know the history of this particular 5-letter word. But even if he didn't, that whole digression aside, it's weird to do playful ribbing and just be that friendly with people you don't know. And as far as I know, he and Maza don't know each other. Period. So, I'm sure that it was meant in a negative way. And either way, whether it was meant to be negative or not, how many times can he get away with saying something negative toward, or how many times can you say or do something that leads to other people, in this case harassing a person, before you are at fault? And how do I know that Steven Crowder saying these things about Carlos Maza led to harassment? Because Carlos Maza has stated that he can accurately predict when Steven Crowder talks about him in a video, because after that video goes up, before Maza is made aware of this, aware of the video's content, the fact that it talks about him, he can predict that it talks about him, because the level of harassment he gets goes up noticeably, sharply, seemingly out of nowhere. That is pretty damning to me. Did Steven Crowder say to his audience, I want you to go harass Carlos Maza? No, he didn't. However, on over a dozen occasions, over 2 years, more than a dozen, probably more than 24 times, he has said negative things about Carlos Maza, things that run the gamut of offensive. And in the wake of him putting out a video on multiple dozen of occasions, he said something negative and harassment has ticked up. And he has not said or done anything to stop that. Nothing. In 2 years, he speaks about Maza at least once a month. And he talks about he says at least once a month he says something negative about Carlos Maza and harassment of Carlos Maza, directed, targeted harassment happens. That is not a coincidence. That is why Carlos Maza says that Steven Crowder is behind this. Did Steven Crowder ever... Did he personally dox Carlos Maza? No. Did he ever say, I want someone to dox this guy? No. But in the wake of so many things, in the wake of Gamergate, among others, you cannot tell me that if you notice a rabid audience going to harass someone, and you think that someone in that audience isn't going to eventually dox them if they get at least tacit support, then you have not been paying attention. You should know better. There's no reason. You cannot honestly say that to me. I will immediately call you out for acting in bad faith, because you are. So yeah. And here's the thing. So all of that is true. All of what I just went over is true. And that is why I think that Steven Crowder being only demonetized is so fucking lucky for him. He got off so incredibly lately. I hope he understands that. I don't think he does, but I hope. I hope deep down in the parts of his brain that he's not going to ever publicly admit exist, that he understands how lucky he is to get off as easy as he did. And all of what I just said is true, but it's not the entire story. Because here's the thing. He gets off with just some demonetization due to something else. Like, YouTube specifically said, we found language that it was clearly hurtful, but the videos as posted don't violate our policies. And they found that Crowder did not encourage his viewers to harass or dox Maza. Because he didn't say harass Maza. He didn't say dox Maza. He just, at some point, or maybe he didn't. Maybe he doesn't realize. Maybe he's not put together that when A happens, A being he talks negatively about Maza, B, Maza gets harassed, happens. A causes B. I think that is clear. Unless Maza is completely lying, and so are hundreds of other people that have been harassed by mainly right-wing white dudes since, at least since Gamergate. maybe he doesn't realize that his talk about Maza leads to harassment. But he should. I don't think there's any reason why he shouldn't know that. But the thing that I keep trying to get to, and I keep sidetracking myself, is he's speaking negatively about a gay man on YouTube, and he gets off very lightly. There's a whole host of LGBT plus creators on YouTube who get demonetized, who get deplatformed, their channels erased, the videos taken down for speaking positively about their issues. Coming out stories are almost universally demonetized by YouTube. And that's part of the problem. That's part of the anger. Is Steven Crowder can do these things and get off with a slap on the wrist by speaking negatively about LGBT creators, people who are LGBT creators, who talk positively about their stuff, who try and help other younger people in their position, get demonetized for that, get deplatformed for that. And people don't see the problem. So, I've rambled on for about an hour now. I think I've said everything I want to say. I could talk so much more about that point I brought up at the end about the demonetization of coming out stories, of all of the issues and problems involved with that. But, again, it's been an hour. I don't think you want to hear about that. Please do the YouTube stuff. Watch this video. Hit the like button if you liked it. Hit the dislike button if you disliked it. Share it. Subscribe if you haven't. Well, I say subscribe. I don't know. This is not something I generally talk about. I generally tell stories, fictional stories that are science fiction or fantasy on my channel. This is... I mean, I sometimes talk about politics. Not often. I generally don't clearly take a side like I am now. For the last 20 seconds of this video, you're going to see a video that YouTube thinks you'll like of mine. Probably my most recent video. Also, you can easily subscribe. And I say to do all that stuff because if I don't say to do it, you are less likely to do it. It's how humans work. If I tell you to do something that you know to do, you're more likely to do it than if I just assume that you know. Even if I'm right in that assumption. or even if I say do the YouTube things, you are less likely to do them than if I say like, share, subscribe, watch the whole damn thing. Though, if you're hearing this, you've watched the whole damn thing. And if you do all those things, YouTube is more likely to show it to more people. That's why I ask. This is an important topic. It does important things. And anyway, if this becomes my most popular video, I might do more things like this. I don't know. You know, supposedly I gotta do a lot to do clickbait, clickbait titles, clickbait thumbnails, and that will get me more views. I will become more popular on the YouTubes if I do that. Chase that algorithm and all that. Anyway, that is my thoughts about this serious topic. I should have another video up soon. It'll probably be a recording of my D&D session that I do every Sunday night. So, tune in for that. Goodbye, everyone.